We're going to start with the cloak because it's hard to get into the inside of that, and to do that we're going to grab some Reaper Brick Red, and we're going to take a rather large brush and kind of just start slapping it on like in a stippling motion. And it's okay to be messy and patchy here. What we're doing is we're adding the color, but we're not doing a full saturated layer. That way that black kind of shows through. Next, we're going to move up a color with AK 3rd Gen's Dirty Red, and we're going to be doing the same thing. We're just going to be stabbing that color into there to sort of gain a texture. Next, we're going to be mixing that Dirty Red with Citadel's Mephiston Red, and we're going to be using a much smaller brush. And for this, I'm using a dry brush with straight bristles. That way we can get in there and control it really well. And at this point, as you stipple with this brush, you want to make sure you're leaving quite a lot of that shadowed area, but you're still going to apply it over the majority of the cloak. Now we're going to be doing pure Mephiston Red, and once again, just do less and less of the stippling and decide where you want your highlights to be, where the sun's going to hit that cape, and build your stippling towards there. Now we're going to be using a normal brush, and at this point we're going to be mixing Evil Sunz Scarlet with our Mephiston Red, and we're going to be painting as well as stippling. And by painting I mean doing some nice line work. At this point, you have ultimate control over where your stippling is going, so make sure you're placing it where you want it, not only in the highlights, but add a little bit into those shadowed areas as well. Then we're going to repeat the process with pure Evil Sunz Scarlet, and you're just going to do some very simple brush and then stipple. Every time you make that brush stroke, start to stipple a little bit as well. Stippling not only creates this cool texture for our cloak, but it also leaves a lot of that dark color showing through, which makes our model look a lot grimmer and darker without slathering it in Agraxar shade. Repeat the process with Citadel Wild Rider Red mixed in with our Evil Sunz Scarlet. And then we're going to be working with pure Wild Rider Red, and it's a very orange color, so we only want to be doing some slight brush work with it and a tiny bit of stippling as our final highlight. And to finish up the red on the cloak, we're going to be taking some orange flare and doing some dot highlights. Apply it only to areas that would catch light. I also glazed some Tooth & Coat's Amethyst Rain, which is a purple, into my shadows. What this does is not only blend some of that stippling together, but it also creates some visual interest with a shadow of a different color. Next, we're going to do the trim of the cloak, and to start that, I'm going to do a base of P3 Thornwood Green. After that, we're going to take AK 3rd Gen Warm Gray, and we're going to apply it not only with some brush strokes, but also some stippling towards the shadow to keep up with that texture on the cloak. Then we'll finish up the cloak with some dot highlights of warm gray mixed in with a pure white. Now we're going to move on to the more Iron Warrior stuff, and we're going to start with those hazard stripes. And a lot of people like to use masking tape, but I'm just going to brush right on there. We're going to use Vallejo Bronze Brown, and we're just going to eyeball it. It's really easy, and if you mess up, you can just apply black to clean up your lines. Focus on getting really saturated lines. As we build up our yellow, it's going to be very important. Layer it up with some Too Thin Coat's Skulker Yellow. I leave a lot of the lower area that darker color. Then we highlight with Too Thin Coat's Yellow Flame, and we want to be stippling here as well. After that, we'll take some watered down Fuegan Orange Wash and glaze it in towards that shadow. And you'll want to do 2 coats of this just to get that orange really saturated in there. Next, we're going to move on to the black portion of the armor, and we're going to start with AK 3rd Gen's Tenebrous Gray, and we're going to apply it pretty liberally over the area. Then we're going to apply a mixture of that Tenebrous Gray with a neutral gray. I'm using Dungeon Stone Gray by Too Thin Coats, and you're going to just stipple it in there. That stipple, once again, is going to create a very cool texture and make it look grimdark. Then you can do some very small highlights of just that pure neutral gray. Next, we're going to move on to that brassy sort of gold color that trims most of the armor. And to start that, we're going to take Too Thin Coat's Bits of Tin and apply it all over those trimmings. Then we're going to highlight with Too Thin Coat's Ancient Gold, which is a very desaturated gold. And if you're ever like, I don't have this Too Thin Coat's color, there is a paint conversion chart in the description below. Next, we're going to wash it with Sepia Wash, and I prefer Sepia because it gives it a nice old and tired look, whereas Agrax Earthshade just makes it dark and dirty. And then I highlight it with Too Thin Coat's Heirloom Gold, which is a brighter but still desaturated gold. Two-toned colors adds a lot of pop to your miniature, so we're going to be doing all of the decorations in a much more saturated gold with Dragon's Gold. We'll wash it with Flesh Wash, which will give it a more warm tone than Sepia. Then we highlight with a mixture of Dragon's Gold and a silver. I'm using Speed Metal. And then we put Speed Metal on just the tips of like spikes and things like that. And then we'll water down some Flesh Wash and reapply it just to tie everything back together. Then we're going to start with the metal, and for that we're going to be taking Reaper's Shadowed Steel and we're going to be stippling it onto our black. And once again, we are stippling to make a moody sort of model, make it grim, make it dark, while creating interesting textures that really pop and look cool. After that, we're going to be stippling some Vallejo Dark Aluminium, and you really want to decide where your sunlight is going to be hitting your model. That's where you're going to start leading your highlights. You want to make sure you leave a lot of the shadow there to show that contrast. With a normal brush, we're going to be stippling some dark aluminium mixed with speed metal, and we're going to do it very lightly across those highlighted areas. And then with pure speed metal, do some dot highlighting, focus on those rivets and edges and corners. We're then going to introduce some color into our metal by glazing in some very, very thin down Tasselar Blue from Citadel. Now you might think the blue is a funny color to add, but we're going to be killing it with some brown mixture in our next step, and that'll make it look like old metal. And our next wash is going to be Army Painter's Warrior Skin, and we're going to be thinning that with contrast medium as well and just applying it over the model's metal parts. That way we can subsidize that blue with a nice warm kind of burnt color and give it a really neat finish. Keeping in line with the two-tone theory that we applied with our gold, we're going to be doing a different color for our off-armor metals, and for that we're going to be using Too Thin Coat's Surcoat's Silver. I'm going to be applying it on the chainmail, I'm going to be applying it on the weapon, as well as the barrels of the gun and the back banner. And to completely remove it from that burnt tone of the other armor, we're going to wash it with Sepia. After that, we're going to rebuild our silver color with Cerakote silver, but we're going to mix in a little bit of that sepia wash to keep the tone there. Then we're going to finish up with some dot highlights of speed metal. To top it all off, and this is going to be an optional step for sure, I'm going to be oil washing it. To oil wash, you're just going to mix in some of that oil paint. I use Winsor & Newton Burnt Umber with some of your Gamsol white spirits or whatever white spirit you have, and we're going to apply it over the entirety of the model with the exception of the cape. I do not want to oil wash that cape. After about an hour of sitting and drying, I'm going to be removing a lot of that oil wash with a Q-tip that is soaked, not soaked, but it has some of that white spirits in it to reactivate the paint as the Q-tip rubs onto the model. And you're not removing all of it. You want to keep that oil wash in there so it can do what it does, and you want it towards the shadows. So when you're taking it off with the Q-tip, just hit those raised areas, hit those areas that you want highlighted. I let the model dry for about 24 hours before I go back and I start to pick up some of those areas that I want highlighted with those colors again, such as the speed metal that I'm showing you here, picking up some of those rivets. And with that, the model is complete, and I hope that this really showcases to you how stippling can help you get your model to that grim, dark place that we really want for things such as Trench Crusade or Horus Heresy. And I know some of you might say, oh well, your oil wash did that, and that's not true. As you can see in the video, as I worked with those stippled layers, rather than doing full saturated layers, it really let a lot of that dark black color show through and make it moody and dingy and exactly where we want it. The oil wash just kind of tied the entire model together. Regardless, I hope that this inspired all of my Iron Brethren out there, and even if you aren't an Iron Warriors fan, a lot of the painting I did here today can be used in other projects, especially the cloak that I did. It produces some really magical results when you do that stippling on a cloak because it gives it that kind of like heavy wool look. And that's another video down. I hope you very much enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, leave a comment if you enjoyed this video, share it with your friends. There's plenty more to come. Gundam's coming back. I'm going to be doing some salamanders, more Marvel coming. I hope you're excited, and I'll catch you in the next one.